Welcome to the next Fairy Tale STEAM story time. Watch at the end of the story for science, technology, engineering, art, and math activities that you can do at home. And this is the story of Little Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time, there was a little girl with a bright red cloak. Had everyone called her Little Red Riding Hood. Her mother had been away for a very long time. She was missing her and wanted to bring her some groceries. So Little Red Riding Hood set out with her red cloak into the woods to get to her grandmother's house. First, she met a woodsman. "What are you doing, my dear?" "I'm off to my grandmother's to bring her these groceries." "Be careful in these woods," he said. "There are wolves in here, and they are hungry wolves." But Little Red Riding Hood skipped on her way. She walked around a pond, hearing the frogs ribbit, 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 and she walked through the woods until she got to her grandmother's house with a long brick walkway. Meanwhile, that Mr. Wolf, that Mr. Wolf was lurking in the woods. And he heard Little Red Riding Hood talking to the woodsman. And he knew a shortcut to grandmother's house. So he zipped there first, and he got there really, really fast. Little Red Riding Hood knocked on her grandmother's door. "Grandma, I have your groceries." "Come in," said Grandma. "Come in." So Little Red Riding Hood opened the door. And when she opened the door, she saw someone in Grandma's bed. She put the groceries down and stayed clear on the other side of the room and looked at her grandmother. As they talked and started to catch up on how they had been over the last few months, Little Red Riding Hood had to ask, "Grandma, what big eyes you have." "Oh, all the better to see you with, my dear." Little Red Riding Hood kept looking at her grandmother. "Grandma, what big ears you have." "Oh, all the better to hear you with, my dear." Little Red Riding Hood kept looking at her grandmother. "Grandma, what big teeth you have." "All the better to eat you with, my dear." And the wolf jumped out of Grandma's bed and lunged at Little Red Riding Hood. Just then, the woodsman came to the door and kicked that wolf right out the door and back into the woods. That poor wolf is just not having a good time. The woodsman helped Grandma out of the closet where the wolf had put her, and Little Red and Grandmother were able to catch up. Little Red Riding Hood was able to go home and live happily ever after. Now stay tuned for a coding exercise where we will code the story of how Little Red Riding Hood got to her grandmother's house. Now we're going to code our way to grandmother's house. You might think your kid is too young for coding, and you might be thinking that it's related to computers and needing to download specific computer programs. And there are lots of great ones out there for kids, including Scratch Junior. But you can start by just the basic coding principles, the basic techniques of coding, which involve sequencing and order of operations. So creating directions, creating a plan. And the first way you can do this is by retelling the story. So when you're done watching all of this, sit down and have your child tell you the story of Little Red Riding Hood. What happened first? what happened next, and what happened at the end. And that's one way that you can practice sequencing, is by retelling stories and putting stories in the right order. So with this coding exercise, we are going to create the directions, or create a guide for Little Red Riding Hood to get to grandmother's house based on the story you just heard. Here's the grid I created on just a big sheet of square paper. And you can see I made a grid. Each box either has something in it or is blank. There's quite a few that are blank. And our job is to get Little Red Riding Hood up there in the corner on the left, all the way to Grandma's house down at the bottom, following the story that we read. And we're going to be using these directional cards, using these arrows, to help Little Red Riding Hood figure out which way she needs to travel. And then we'll use the numbers to decide how many blocks she needs to move in the story. So do you remember what happened first when Little Red Riding Hood set out with her basket full of groceries for her grandma? She ran into somebody first. She ran into the woodsman, right? In the grove over here of apple trees. So can you count with me, how many spaces does Little Red Riding Hood need to move to get to that woodsman? If she moves forward, let's kind of show you, if she moves forward like this, how many spaces does she need to move to get all the way down to the woodsman? Ready? Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Where did you end up? Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. So she went to the right here, or ahead, 4 spaces. So I'm going to put this down here. So here, Little Red Riding Hood went to the right 4 spaces, right? So that's our first set of directions. Now, she needs to turn, right? She needs to turn and travel towards what? Do you remember? Ribbit, ribbit, ribbit. The pond. So let's count how many squares it takes her to get to the frogs in the pond. 1, 2, 3, right? So here she traveled down 3. So far she went over 4 and down 3. Now which way does she go? She can't go straight because the frog and the pond are right in front of her. So she's going to need to turn and go. Looks like she can only go 1 square, right? Because the woods are right over here. So she's got to turn and she's got to go 1 square. So we'll use this arrow and 1, right? So here's our list of directions. And then she needs to turn. And how many squares does it take to get to the brick path to grandmother's house, which starts right here? So let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like we need another number 4. Slide this out of the way. And we can move our directions up a little bit here so we have some more room. So she goes down 4. Okay. And now we're on that path and we're going to go to the left. 1, 2, and 3 to get to Grandma. So we're going to the left and we're going 3. So if we put Little Red Riding Hood back at the top, we could retell the story using our coded directions here. Little Red Riding Hood turns right and goes 4 squares, down and goes 3, left 1, down 4, and left 3. And that would help us get from Little Red Riding's house to Grandma's house. Now this is something that you could do at home with your own stories, or you could create your own storyboard, create your own story. And all you need is to make little arrows and numbers, and you can code your own story just like I did. Here are some materials that you can check out through the library's curbside service, including this fairy tale STEM kit where you are building a basket to carry Little Red Riding Hood's apples. This is also something you could do easily at home with materials around the house. So see if you can use toothpicks to build a basket, or popsicle sticks, or even Lego bricks would work. And then, find different things you can put in the basket to take to grandmother's house. It's a great way to teach engineering. If you want to do some more research into coding, there's this great book. It's actually a picture book called How to Code a Roller Coaster. And on the library's Overdrive app, you can check out a lot of books in this Girls Who Code series. If you want some more versions of Little Red Riding Hood, we have Very Little Red Riding Hood and Little Red Writing. Notice she's a pencil here. And in our nonfiction collection, we have a lot of great fairy tale books, including Brave Red Smart Frog, which includes a lot of different short stories, as well as Red Riding Hood Retold by Beatrix Potter. All of these items are available through the curbside service, and there's even more related to coding and fairy tales available through library's Overdrive and Libby apps. I can't wait to see what you've come up with. Please put pictures in the comments or send them to me at the library so I can see what you have created.